All right. All right. Are we good?
I
Just
think so.
making sure.
Yeah. Is the chat working? It looks like it's.
Yeah, we should be good. All right,
Yeah.
guys.
Sweet.
All right. We try and try it again. Thanks for joining us again. Like Jeremy is with us today here, and Jeremy is an amazing animator, artist, director, just everything.
Thank you.
He just finished his short film, his thesis film,
Right.
right?
Senior thesis film. Yeah.
Senior thesis film, which is an amazing film. If you guys haven't checked it out, The Box Assassin, it's the in the description, and we're gonna be playing here and as we
Yeah.
talk because I do want to ask you a bunch of questions, and I'm sure people have a lot of questions that they want to ask as well because making a film is not easy
Yeah.
to begin with, right? I think when you're first starting, if you're a student and you dream about this, you dream about this job, it's something that it's a kind of a dream that you kind of get to realize how hard it is when you actually start making it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to start like even before we start talking about the film, just kind of
Uh-huh.
talk a little about yourself because we've talked on social media and I've
Right.
got to know your work more now in the past few weeks, and I'm just curious to like where you come from, where you are, where you going.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, it's true. It's like, I think making a film has been kind of the dream and the goal for a long time. So, this for me is like huge. I'm super proud of how everything came out. But, I did start from that place a long time ago, like back in probably middle school. That's when I really got into like filmmaking. I wasn't doing much at the time. I was just like a normal kid, like playing sports. But I discovered like YouTube channels called, if you ever heard of like Quarter Digital, or they make really cool like YouTube videos, but it's just like indie filmmaking almost too, where they have cameras, small crews, and so I got really into that with my brother at home, and so we would use our mom's camera and like make films and just like really just get into that. And we studied, I got to study like filmmaking that way, like lenses, cameras, how all that works, and so I really got into the filmmaking aspect. But then, the animation part kind of came later. I got really into computers too with like visual effects and stuff. But then I saw stuff on YouTube too where people were creating like films, even like Minecraft animations, just all kind of stuff. But like it was a small team, and they were able to create big things inside the computer because if you're a small crew with a film, you have limited resources, but inside the computer you have a lot more flexibility. So that really got me excited about animation, and so I kind of started to go that route. And once I went that route, I started reaching out. I was emailing people like, hey, how do I get into 3D animation? And someone responded to me and they were like, I was telling them like, oh, I want to make a film in the computer, like animation, like, Maya, like all this stuff. But they're like, do you know how to draw at all? And I emailed him back. I was like, why do I have to know how to draw for the animation? I was really clueless at the time. But he really helped me. And then I started to get into art. And I realized like how important art fundamentals are in regards to filmmaking, just like color theory and lighting and how it all kind of builds on top of each other. And so it's been like a really weird journey to get to like computer animation and get to Ringling. But, after I started pursuing that and drawing, I applied to Ringling, went there. And then that's kind of when, yeah, I think that's when I kind of started to realize like, wow, how intense animation is, how much thought goes behind every single frame. And it was overwhelming, but also like I felt like it was a really like perfect spot for me to be as far as like technology, but also filmmaking. So yeah, I went through all 4 years of Ringling and ended up making this film, and here we are today. I mean, that's quick summary, but yeah, that's kind of it. Oh, I can't hear you, Ralph.
My bad.
Oh, there we go.
It's funny you mentioned that even on the like I can like when you first started and you look at like YouTube videos and the corridor digital stuff, and
Right.
it's something that like everybody has access to, right? And I'm sure it inspires so many young filmmakers that they're kind of got into like this YouTube thing or just
Yeah.
watching on YouTube and like understanding more the behind the scenes because like back in the days, like not even too long ago, like, it's very hard to get access to those things. So
Right.
it's awesome that you come from that and you got to where you are right now uh, with that little bit of spark from those guys and all the other different. I even forgot, but I remember watching a lot of those videos. Like
Right.
because even like that was it Eddie or there's tons of like guys that are
There's Freddie
Freddie.
W.
Yeah,
Freddie
Freddie.
W.
That was
Yeah,
the
like
guy
Freddie
who.
W. and Quarter Digital. Like they have so many tutorials and like filmmaking stuff. And me and my brother, like we would get to the point where we watched all their videos on their channel, and we would just be waiting for the next video. And so we
Mhm.
got home, we both watch it. We'd go try out like whatever they were talking about. So we loved it. Like we ate it up. It was our whole like childhood just
That's cool.
consuming that stuff. So
How, how
yeah,
much? How much did it change for when you actually got access to like, okay, I'm gonna apply to school and go and take this for as a career? Like, did you have you made like animations prior to that, just watching those guys, or was it mostly like motion effects and
yeah, mostly like just like film and like I did a little bit, but I wouldn't say that it was animation like character animation. I wasn't like focused on like acting or performance at all. It was more so just like yeah, like when I was doing stuff with my brother, like I was doing like muzzle flashes and like explosions. And then I got a little bit into After Effects. Like there's a guy called Andrew Kramer from VideoCopilot.net and I like watched all those tutorials. So yeah, it started transition, and that's the thing with like Ringling that was nice is I gained a bit deeper of understanding for like what really goes on when you're animating a shot. It's not just making a character move. You know, you're shooting reference, you're thinking about the performance. So there was a transition from kind of just like a shock and awe of like, wow, this is so cool to understanding, you know, how deep it really goes and how much work is behind what you see on like big screens and stuff.
what was that process for you to like pick a school and like would you looked at too? Because that's one of the
Yeah.
questions that I get a lot, and I don't even know how to answer it. Where people would ask me like,
Yeah.
"What
Did you go
school
to
do I go
school?
to?" I didn't actually. I started working
Really?
when I was really young. Like I made
I see.
a very simple portfolio, and I was very fortunate to get a chance to work in the studio when
Oh, that's awesome.
I was like 17. I got like a full time job, and that was really my school. Like
That's awesome. Yeah.
I started with animation as well, doing
Okay.
yeah, like what, and then I started specializing. I did do some like courses in animation
Hmm.
because initially everybody wants to do animation
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
you're starting, and then I kind of found myself going more into like the art side of things. I mean, art into like creating characters and just doing more of the modeling and texturing and all that stuff. But
Right.
my the beginnings of my career was more focused on animation. So that's why
That's
I'm
cool.
curious. Like, if someone
Yeah.
would ask you that question, like, how would you answer it?
It was interesting. Like again, when I was reaching out to people, like how do I pursue animation? And there was this one guy that just kind of helped me along the way and gave me a lot of feedback. And it was cool because I met him like 8 years later, and now we're friends. And like we met each other, so it was really cool to go from that journey. But he told me one day I was talking to him, and I had this idea in high school. I was like, I knew what school he went to because that's how I found him is by his student film. And I was like, oh, what school? You know, is that a good school? And he's like, yeah, it's a good school. I was like, I think I need to go there. And this school's in France. I live in the United States. So like I had this idea that in order to achieve what he achieved, I had to go to that school and I had to follow his path and do exactly what, like seriously, this was like where my mind was at. I like told my parents, I was like, I need to go to this school. This is
Like
what needs to
Dublin
happen.
or something?
It's something like that. It wasn't that one, but it was one of those like CG schools.
Yeah.
Um, but he told me, he texted me, he's like, dude, he's like, it doesn't matter that much about the school. He's like, if you have the drive, you know, that's what matters at the end of the day. He's like, if you have that drive and that desire and the passion, he's like, it doesn't matter. You know, I think there's different schools that teach different things and you should look into that. And Ringling, you know, what appealed to me about that was the films is, you know, that's what I think appeals to a lot of people is that you get to make a film. And that was kind of the, you know, dream and like excitement for me. So I think that's what drew me there. But at the end of the day, that was kind of my only option. Like I applied to Cal Arts and I didn't get in because I'm not as much of a 2D artist. You know, I'm not super strong in that regard. But it was definitely the best fit for me to go to Ringling because I think as far as like they kind of have a generalist education and again, you get to make a film. But yeah, I kind of got rid of the idea that, oh, I need to be here to succeed. But, you know, I went to Ringling and they have a lot of great tools, a lot of great places. And I just, you know, whatever resources I could use there to grow, that's what I did. So, you know, if I was to tell people, I would just say, look at, you know, don't do what I did. Evaluate, you know, what's in, you know, what you're capable of, like what's available. But there's no like right answer, like perfect path. Everybody's path is different. So don't try and copy.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
How's the short movie production, I guess, divided into the course? Because you mentioned it's a 4 year long.
Yeah, it's a 4 year course. The way it's divided for a thesis film is your junior year, the second semester. That's when you start like pitching ideas for your senior year. So you start pre-production, and so the way that usually goes down is you'll end the semester with 5 weeks left, and you'll have two ideas that are they have an animatic, and you have like visual development, like character design stuff. So with 5 weeks left, the faculty will look at those two ideas and kind of help you choose which one you're going to make your senior year. In my case, I made two films with 5 weeks left. Like neither of those films were The Box Assassin. So and they said I could. They were like, you can do either of those films, and I just didn't like love either idea. I was like, it's not there. And so I had this other idea. I was like, I want to try this one, and so I ended up doing that. But from there, your senior year, once you start, you just start modeling, and then like after like a month, you have a modeling crit, and then you show turntables to the professors, and it kind of just keeps going like that throughout the year. At the end of the first semester, you have a screening in front of the whole school, which is fun, or the whole department, should I say? And you show your film like in PlayBlast form. So it's animated, but it's not fully rendered or lit, but it's fully PlayBlasted. Like animation is supposed to be mostly done. And then the next semester, light, render, composite. So it's kind of split up like that. And you have crits along the way. So, after that modeling crit, we had a layout crit, and then we had an animation crit, and then it was the final deadline. So it has a nice structure. It's really intense, but it is kind of nice to have those deadlines to push you. Granted, you still have to be organized to, manage everything, but it's nice to have that structure because it really pushes you. So that's one thing I'll say about Ringling is that it's really nice to kind of have that structure in place, even though it can be tough. I think was helpful for me. So
yeah. I have a lot of questions about that just in general.
Yeah, sorry, it's a lot. It's like a whole, like you kind of like when you're at school, it takes years. Like the first 2 years, you're just understanding how like this whole system works because it's kind of its own thing. So I didn't mean to dump all that on you. Sorry.
No. Like, please, just this is awesome.
Yeah.
That first thing you mentioned though, like that, just pitching the ideas at first, and
Right.
I mean, we do a lot of that in studios and pitching like game ideas and stuff like that. How much time did you put in on each idea? Because I imagine, especially being somewhat fresh into the business, like I don't know even like how much experience you had prior to this, but
Right.
it must be tough to like commit to 4 years or 3 years in of like your future into something that you have to just kind of pitch right there in the moment. So I do get it, like,
Right.
well, maybe you don't love all the ideas that you initially had.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
so, and how do you actually catch up to that point? Like, do you have like traditional basic art classes to like, how does that
Yeah.
make
No.
how does that make you ready to pitch ideas?
No, that's a great question. Yeah, there's like the whole first year at Ringling is art fundamentals. So you're doing life drawing, like sculpting with clay, stuff like that, and you don't even. I think if you're in the animation department, you touch animation like the second semester, but you're still not on the computer. The whole first year, you're just doing the fundamentals.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, yeah, your sophomore year and then your junior year, the first semester, yeah, you have like story classes, and so you have a class dedicated to basically storyboarding and like kind of working on your storyboarding skills, and like you also kind of learn to pitch log lines. You're pitching your 7-sentence story structure. There's different ways to do it, but you do get like kind of a crash course on that idea of pitching things. But I don't think you can ever like truly prepare for it or be like, I'm ready to go, I have the perfect idea, because I definitely didn't. And it still took that whole semester of doing it before I got to the very end, and I was like, okay, now I think I know what I want to do. And so it was, and even after that, the story still changed. Like the story, like the whole car aspect of them driving away in the car, none of that was there at the end of that semester once I was done with the story. So like I was rewriting over the summer. I was changing the film once I started layout, making up, adding shots. So like it never stops, the iteration process.
Nice.
It's interesting, but they do prep you some for it. There's classes on story, and you get a sense for that. So But again, yeah, it's hard to prepare. I think in the end, you just kind of have to. I think like how you started, like learning in a studio and a job, like you learn so much just by just doing it.
You gotta
Like
do it, yeah.
so, I think that's the what kind of worked for me at the end is just getting
it's
thrown
it's
into the
it's
fire.
the same thing. Yeah, it's the same thing when you mentioned too, like at first, and like when you said, if someone asked the questions, like you don't have to do it like me, because in reality, everything's gonna work different. And
Right.
until you actually do the work, right, it's like nothing's gonna happen for you if you like just watching, trying to absorb it until like if you're not just hands on doing it, like you're
Yeah,
not
yeah.
gonna.
No, absolutely. I think I struggled with that early on because like again, like I asked that guy like, what school do you go to, and I was always like searching for the best school a lot. Like I did search through a lot of schools, and I searched for like tutorials, and I searched for like the perfect course or class. Like there's a website, I forget what it's called, but they teach like CG courses for like a subscription thing. But I was just like, oh, if I can just get the subscription for this thing, like I can learn how to make a film. Versus like realizing that I didn't make a film until like 6 years later. So it was just a long journey and it just takes time. Like I was trying to like force it and just get some like magic secret. But it just took
Right.
time of just making, and at school, you make these shorter projects. Like this isn't my first CG project. Like we started out with like a 10-second project and then a 15-second project. Then I think I did like a 30-second project before I did the film. So it was a progression of building up to that.
Nice. So how does that work when this kind of progression? Is it just more kind of as you're studying, you're just making a film to practice?
Kind of. You like you have your story class, like I talked about, and then you have a animation class, and it's not just animation. It's kind of like learning the Maya, being a CG generalist, because the way it kind of works at Ringling is you'll have a project early on in sophomore year called like Sit Stand, and you design a character like a biped from the ground up. You model it, you rig it, you texture it, and then you animate it and light it and render it. And it only ends up being like 10 seconds long.
Mhm.
But you go through that process probably like 3 or 4 times at the school. Like the next semester, junior year, the first semester, I did it all again. I made a new character, I rigged it, I modeled it, textured it. And so by senior year, I'm like, I kind of feel like I know what I'm doing. I'm like, I think I got the hang of it. So yeah, you slowly build up. They're not films, they're just like small projects. They're like, we want the character to sit down and stand up. Like that's
Mhm.
your prompt. So it's really simple. They keep it simple as far as the prompts, so then it builds up into where you're making
Right.
your own project and film.
Right. You kind of mentioned a little bit about like how good it was for you being part of this environment and everything, but how
Right.
how much different you think your kind of growth would have been if you didn't go to school, if you were to do it like by yourself or with
Yeah.
courses of going on that route, because not everybody has the opportunity to like take that type of classes. And how would
No,
you kind of guide someone who wants to do what you've been through?
that's a really good question. Yeah, because I mean, I almost left the school. Like after the first year, I was really close to leaving
Oh,
because
really?
it
You
was
just
all
didn't do it.
fundamental courses, and I again I didn't like excel in those. I didn't feel like I was really making a lot of progress, and I got really discouraged. Um, and I was just like, I don't know if this is for me, like art in general.
Mhm.
And I was so close. Like the day before I came back to school, like my dad's like, "You're not going back, right?" And I was like, "No, I think I'm gonna go back." He's like, "What? I thought you weren't going back." So I went back, and that semester, like we jumped into Maya, and I was like, "This is great." Like I was like, I feel like this is the nice mix of like what I've been missing, and from that point on, I started to feel really comfortable. But I've thought about that. It's like if I didn't go to school, I would just. I think one of the most important things, and this is something I did at school that's not required, but I think that's one great thing about school that helped me, and that's just like reaching out to people to get feedback from, and like really honest feedback, and like more than person, like as many people as possible. And I kind of did the same thing in high school with that guy that I talked about earlier. Like he gave me, like I would send him drawings and I would ask him questions, and he kind of mentored me. So my advice would maybe be to reach out to people, look at like films online, like email people, and just be really kind and courteous, and just ask for advice, ask for any tips, and just kind of ask them for any guidance. Because throughout college, even though I had professors, I had classes, I reached out to a bunch of people, upperclassmen, people whose work I respected, and I just asked for feedback like all the time. like constant. And I think like, yeah, it was just like, I would kind of bug them, not too much. You have to find the right balance of not, being, but really I was just like, like whatever you think is wrong, just be honest with me. I just want to hear your honest opinion. So I would get honest feedback from a few different people. And then I would have like this pile of notes that I can go apply to my work. And so I think that was super helpful. And I think that's possible even outside of school. Like, especially nowadays, you have access to people's websites, people's emails. So I think that's a huge thing that I would do if I didn't go to school, is just search for people that I can get feedback from, and that can kind of help me along the way, in that regard. But I think that's something helpful you can do.
Yeah, I was actually curious to just even on feedback, like how does that filter in the production for you? Because feedback is a huge part of any big production where you need cycles to like address it. But I would
Right.
imagine in such kind of a tight schedule and doing everything yourself, basically, like how do
Yeah.
you consciously make those like makes those decisions of like, oh, I need to go back and actually address this versus this is just a student film, like I just need to get
Right.
this
Right.
done, like yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. It's prioritizing what's important and what matters. But I really tried to, it's tough. I don't know. I think over time, once you once you ask for feedback enough, you start to kind of learn what is important to apply, and then you also kind of learn how to apply notes, because sometimes, like with the film, I'm trying to think. I know there's parts, but even on like the voiceovers, like I got notes, and some people would be um, like they would give a specific note, like maybe for this shot, like I don't like how this part looks, but maybe there's like a deeper problem behind the shot, and so I'll keep addressing that note versus I'm just like I kind of need to start over and like readdress. Like there was a shot in the film where um, the character reacted in like a really big way, and the voiceover was like really big, and everyone's like, oh, maybe you can like change what he says there, but like the actual note was, it was way over exaggerated.
Mm.
So I needed to change not only the dialogue but also the animation. And I realized that early on. I was like, no, it's a bigger change. I need to kind of shift this as a whole. And
For
so I
sure.
could have like kept like making small changes and not really getting anywhere, but instead I just took the big leap and realized that it was a big change. Um,
Big problem, yeah.
but as far as managing like notes, I don't know, that is tough. I'm kind of just always asking. Like I told someone this the other day, like I had like Maya open and then I had like Messenger open, and
Mm.
I would just message people and just be like, drag this picture over, get over and be like, hey, what do you think? And like the tough part is it's almost never encouraging, really. Especially since these are people I like trust and they're honest, they're always going to tell me what's wrong with it. So when I message them, maybe I want to hear like, oh, that's so good, like amazing job. But usually what I hear is like, you could probably like change that part. I'm just like, yeah, I know. So I just kind of get comfortable in that state of knowing that it's going to go through a few passes. Like
Yeah,
I'm not done. This isn't going to be done. And so once I'm okay with that, um, then I think that helps me manage everything and not feel like, oh, I got to get this done right away. It's like everything's good together. That's one thing I'll say. Sorry, this is a long answer, but
no, it's
kind of
perfect.
trying to bring everything up as a whole and not
Mhm.
let anything fall behind too far, is something else. Like when I was animating, I didn't animate one shot to completion and it's 100%. And then these other shots, I'm not. It was kind of like I'll jump over here and bring this up and bring this up, and I did kind of the same thing with lighting and with everything else. It was just kind of like making sure everything comes up together,
Mhm.
so that nothing falls behind. So I think that was helpful too.
Will you go
Oh,
for it?
sorry, go ahead.
No, no, you.
Well, I was gonna say is I learned. Oh, did I cut out? No, I'm back. Okay. Is I learned things throughout the process. So like when I was lighting, I had a different hue kind of going throughout the film. So rather than finalizing any, I realized that kind of halfway through, and I was like, oh, I'm going for this different shade of blue. And so I was able to go back through all of my scenes and make that adjustment, versus like having 10 rendered shots like they're supposed to be done. And then that scares me. I was just bringing it all together. So I learned a lot while I was in the middle. And so I was able to those across the board. So that's something else I think that was helpful and like remaining consistent as far as
Yeah.
the film goes.
So I mean, you stayed, I'm guessing, like pretty confident through the process then of just knowing what how is it going to look like, right? Because you're saying like just trying to bring everything to completion at the same time. Like how did you bounce? How was your schedule to just kind of work on these shots? Was it like a you just bouncing around trying to get everything
Kind of,
into?
yeah. I wouldn't say I was super confident the whole time. I was kind of in a state of panic for a lot of it.
Did
But
you had at least
yeah,
one shot at first that you like? Okay, this is the look of.
yes, that's a good point. Like, there's a few shots actually, because there's a few different like parts of the film. Like, there's the montage in the beginning, so that was kind of different, and I just kind of tried to bring that up all together. But that's a really good point. There was like a few key shots that I did focus on earlier on, and so yeah, sorry, I should have made that clear. I didn't really think about that, but yeah, like those first few shots, there was like three or four, and I brought those up pretty far to get like a consistent look, and that taught me a lot of things too, as far as like, oh, don't have these lights too bright in the background, otherwise they'll draw attention from everything else. So yeah, those few shots kind of define the look of the film. But even if I go back to when I showed those shots, like those four shots, and then show the final version, they even changed a lot.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, but you know, you're totally right. There was like a first pass. Like there's a shot in the film. Okay, I just played, but it was the one where you see like all the goons and the boss,
Mhm.
and that was one of the shots where I was like defining how this feels, how dark is it, what shade of blue. So yeah, that's definitely a good point. I had those anchors that I could go back to if I ever felt like I got lost throughout the process.
Yeah,
So yeah,
awesome. Is the there's so much more than just animation, and when you say like, oh, this is kind of an animation uh, thesis, I don't know like what is actually the course is called. Like you've done so much of just like modeling, rigging the facial, like we're just looking at facial tests and all that
right.
stuff. Is that how do they filter that into the course? Is that just at the beginning, or as you're making this long, as you're making this short, this movie, this film, do you kind of have classes to then introduce you? Because I imagine like it's hard to just you're just making this thing that's going to take you 4 years, and you're
Right,
learning
right. Yeah, you're introduced to this stuff kind of earlier on. Like you're rigging like the face and stuff. Like we use what's it called? We use something called like rapid rig. So you get like the skeleton and then you have to like paint the weights and all that stuff. But you start that process sophomore year and junior year so that you've gone through it before. So
Mhm.
there's like more advanced things like I added like hair to the characters and I hadn't really done that before, but like rigging, like they had prepared me for that. You know, I felt pretty comfortable in that regard, so it wasn't just like senior year comes and like now I have to rig a character and like they have to teach me rigging. By senior year, like I was more independent as far as a lot of the technical skills go. Most of what I was talking to like my professor about was very creative things, as far as like should the camera be here, should the camera be here. I wasn't asking him as much like how do I rig the character, and a lot of that too. I just like I go to docs, I go to software docs or Google stuff online with YouTube tutorials,
Mhm.
because what I really was valuable for my teacher was the creative input of like this staging isn't working, or this lighting, you know, you can darken this area, make this area, you know, the focus. So you know that's something else that helped, I think, is um, I mean, everyone's at a different level. So if by that time you're still really struggling with technical things, it can be tough to focus on the creative part of it. So
Yep.
yeah, but they definitely teach you those things. It's not like senior year, then you've never like rigged a character before. Like by then you should feel pretty confident, well, at least at that school. So yeah,
That's pretty cool.
yeah,
Even the reason I keep going back to this because I know how I'm more like self taught, and I know a lot of people come from that same background,
for sure.
and just like I learn things just by trying and trying, and sometimes when you try one technique, then it's not even the best technique,
Yeah,
uh, and I know probably in school you have this maybe the teachers even will teach you something that may or may not be used, in the industry or whatnot. Like I imagine
yeah,
your school, the school is pretty good, but you do have cases like that, and there's many different schools out there. So yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I know like just the curiosity of like trying different things and then just pushing the quality, like it's something.
100%. Like it's still there for me. Like even with the school, providing things. Like there were some things the school said to do, like as far as like I know one thing that I didn't do for the film was like texturing your characters with like UDMIs or whatever it's called, where you have like 4 panels. That was like in the recommended material. But I personally wasn't comfortable with it, and I really didn't have time. So I was like, I'm going to do what I know how to do and what's fastest for me. So I was like, we'll just go this route. And like, there's other things too where I'm just like, kind of going with whatever I feel is fastest. Like one example is the car, like the driving scenes. Like a lot of those things, like if you go and ask someone, like, how do you animate a car driving past something? Most people are like, well, like take the characters, constrain them in the car, constrain the camera, and then move the car. It's like, that makes sense. That's probably the right thing to do.
What
but like,
do?
I grouped the entire set and all the models, and then I just put 2 keys on the group and translated it past the car. Because when I was animating the characters and when I was lighting the film, like it was annoying because I open up the scene and the car is always in a different spot, and then it just messed up my lighting. It was causing issues with like motion blur. So I was like, I don't know like what you're supposed to do, but I was like, this simplifies things for me, so I'm just going to do it this way. And it's definitely like, if you were in a studio, like you probably wouldn't do it that way because there's a pipeline and like everyone needs to work together. But like, again, like whatever works, whatever's fastest, especially on something like this where you're working by yourself, you don't have to pass it off to anybody. You know, I did a lot of things like that I think helped speed up the process.
For sure. Yeah.
So,
I mean,
yeah.
And you'd be surprised too, like the amount of hacks that goes down on
Oh, really?
every production has done. Like, you know, just got anything that gets the job done.
That's good. That's good to hear. So, but,
so even like past the like even say like lighting and composing and all that stuff. How did you learn that? Was that part of it, or is it because I know you mentioned you've tried that before? So
it's like I think it's hard to say. Like I definitely learned. Like I don't want to discount anything that I've learned from the school, but like also I think like a lot of like my sensibilities with like a camera and layout, like I think a lot of that came from before I went to Ringling.
Mm-hmm.
I had like me and my brother eventually got a DSLR and we had a lens and we were composing shots and editing too. You know, like we did a lot of stuff in high school, and so I think a lot of those sensibilities came from not like watching. Well, I think watching films helped, but like not just like learning about it, like you were saying. Like I was out there doing it in high school. Like we would shoot stuff every weekend on a camera. And so once I got into Maya, I was like, cool, it's just like a DSLR. And I felt really comfortable and confident with how I placed the camera because I already had that experience going in. But like compositing stuff, like I knew very little as far as like nuke goes. Like that was totally new to me. So it was just like a combination of different things. You know, the school taught me some tools and some things, and then some things I brought over from like filmmaking and before, you know, I got into Ringling. So it's just like weird. I don't know. It all builds on top of each other. I don't know exactly where it all came from, but I also like, even at school, I'm doing a lot of research on my own. Like I'm doing a lot of YouTube tutorials, like finding stuff online. And so that's happening too. It's not like I totally stopped that and I just rely on what they're giving me. I'm still going out there and looking for stuff to learn.
That's perfect.
Even in that setting. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's what kind of sets us apart, right? Because it is kind of that drive to just get better and just, I guess, know everything or know as much as you can from what's out there. Because even the technology like changes so fast that sometimes you would try something that you would speed up the process by a lot, right?
Right. No, totally. And like an example of that is like the snow in the film. Like I pitched that to the faculty and they're all like, snow. That's like, that seems like a lot. And I was like, I'm not really sure how I'm going to do it. And they were uncertain about it. And I was uncertain about it too. But like what I kind of knew from my previous experience was like, I know After Effects. I know how to like comp stock footage because of like muzzle flashes and explosions from like the Corridor Digital days. And so all of the snow you see in the film is comped in. None of it's simulated or in the scene. And you can probably tell some, but like I think it holds up decently. So
for sure.
Yeah, like that knowledge I Googled stuff and figured out, but like that's not something I was taught in school. Like I just kind of had to figure that out on my own.
That's great
as far as that goes. So
that's awesome.
Yeah,
it holds up for sure. It gives that kind of cinematic quality to it.
That's good. Yeah, I'm sure some people can tell, but I think most people it fools them. So that's the goal.
What about like you mentioned the kind of the sensibilities for things, and I do agree with you. A lot of it comes from your background, like how you like things that you got exposed to even growing up, and especially like at an older age where you start getting exposed to movies, and
Right.
it really depends on the environment that you grow up. That
Mm.
I think that's definitely part of it. Of course, like once you get into this different environment, you can kind of feed your brain with as much as information as you can. But the
Yeah, yeah.
sensitivity, I think, is something that comes with time. For stuff like lighting and I guess even storyboarding and things like that. Like,
Mm.
do you think did you have a clear understanding of your taste when you got into making this
Mm.
movie, or is that something that developed with kind of the day to day of like making something?
Right. That's a really good question. I think, I think, I think for like story, I think story is a great example of like I didn't know what my sensibilities were exactly. Um, like I remember going into talk to one of my teachers about story. This is when I had like two stories that I didn't like so much. And I was like, hey, like I was talking to him. I'm like, I'm not super happy with either of these ideas. And he was like, what do you like? Like, what stuff do you like to make? And it was kind of hard for me to pinpoint. And I pointed out other student films that I liked. He was like, yeah, that's cool that you like those. But he's like, that's their film. He was like, what's your film going to be? And I was just like, I don't know. That's terrifying. So like story is a great example of like making this film, I think helps solidify what I enjoy making and what I like making, which is like, again, I started out with like making kind of actiony stuff. Like I liked that as a kid, quarter digital. It's like, and so it was fun to bring that sensibility over into an animation and CG world. And I found like that's a lot of fun for me. Like I enjoy that. So I'm going to explore that like direction more in the future. And I think kind of the same thing happened with lighting, but like with lighting, it happened earlier. Like with the earlier projects, I just got more familiar faster with that. So I think story has been the toughest for me as far as like figuring out what I really like to make.
Mhm.
And I feel bad for saying that because I feel like a lot of people as artists or creators that you're supposed to have like a vision. You're supposed to know like exactly what you want all the time. It's like, yeah, I like this type of stuff. But for me, it's like I've been discovering it and like figuring out as I go, like what I like to make. And
Yeah.
but it's been fun. So, but I feel like some of the visual aspects like lighting, I'm a very visual person. So it comes a lot easier. So like the lighting, like very atmospheric, like the blue, heavy blue. Like I knew that going into this film, I was like, I want to push that really hard.
Nice.
But the story and stuff, like it took time to get there, and I'm still learning that. So yeah,
I think it's something with creators, like you say, mention like you're supposed to know what you want and kind of has a clear vision. It's something that working with a lot of directors and mostly directors and but creators in general, like
mm-hmm.
most of the time we like a lot of things if it's well made, and
Right,
at a certain point you just have to kind of try to break it down, like you mentioned, of like what exactly do I like about this, and where do I see myself going with the things that kind of fulfill that little creative juice that I need, right? But I
yeah,
think we like so many different things if it's well done, and that's when I know a lot of people that get into projects because it's a cool project, but
mm,
they get frustrated because it's not really what they
I
like to
see.
make. So
Right,
and even the reason I asked that question is because I know it's something that comes with time, and I think people, if you haven't done that exercise, I think people need to break it down into like things you want to like, what things you want to work on in the future, why, like
right,
why
right.
do I like these things, and any change with time. But I think that it's a good exercise to make.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I know in my junior year, I did something that was an animation assignment, and it was really cartoony. It was like it was supposed to be more pushed, and I like really cartoony stuff. I like stuff that's really exaggerated and like smear frames and like just like crazy animation. But also, I kind of found that I was like, I don't know if I like making this kind of stuff as much. So it was an interesting realization. I was like, even though I like it and I appreciate it, I could watch it all the time. I don't know if it's what is really right for me to make as far as like from a passion standpoint. Like 2 weeks in, do I still love making this? Um, and like with a film, I was like, this thing that surprises me to this day is I still don't hate it. And which is crazy because I hate stuff that I make all the time. Um, so yeah, it was really cool to have that difference, like that other project, 5 weeks in, I was like, I really want to do something else. But like this project, it was hard and like, it was tough throughout. And I was like, oh man, but at the end of the day, I was still like, I'm happy what I'm working towards, and I can see it paying off.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I
How hard it was. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm
oh
curious.
no, you're good. Like how difficult was it to
Yeah,
make?
yeah. You did like crunch, like you couldn't like out,
I
you
mean,
know.
again, like at the school, everyone's working their butt off at the school. It's and I think everybody is. So I don't know, like to judge how hard someone's working. I feel like that's difficult to do, to compare work effort or yeah. But
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it was a lot. Like my brother told me the other day, he was like, I don't really remember how hard it was. I asked you to play Rocket League like every weekend, and every weekend you said no. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. So it was, there was a lot of stuff where you kind of sacrifice time, but again, like I loved what I was making, so it wasn't a huge sacrifice at the same time. I was like, yeah, I'm missing out on this, but also I was like, I'm kind of excited to go do this thing.
Yeah.
And that was something along the project too. Like, there's different parts where you kind of get burnt out, or it's like, I'm not really feeling like animating today, but like I know towards the end of the project, once I started compositing, like I feel super comfortable like doing a muzzle flash. Like right here in this box shot, there's two muzzle flashes. So I'd be like, you know what I'm going to do tonight? I was like, I'm going to do those. I'm going to knock those out. And I feel super comfortable doing that. It's fun for me. It's relaxing. And then I would do that, and then it would give me some like creative energy, especially once I saw it play out. I'd be like, hey, that's pretty cool. And then I'd be ready to go tackle something else. So I think like doing that along the way helped a lot to
Yep.
kind of keep me going throughout the process.
I don't know, man. I saw some footage of you animating your like shooting yourself on the
Oh, right.
reference. You look pretty rough there.
Yeah, I mean, dude, yeah, I should send
I'm
you
just
some other clips. No, for real. Like, there's some clips where, like, yeah, like my eyes are like I haven't slept in like 2 days. I'm like shooting some reference, so it was a lot. But again, like, yeah, I
yeah.
enjoy making it.
I'm
So
joking, but I know I asked that question because I know like people that come off like fresh out of school and go into like jobs. Like I think this industry is rough depending on like studios you work with or
right,
kind of times of the project you get into where there's definitely that final push similar to what you probably went through with this
yeah,
where everybody's like we need to get this thing done, like we've worked on this for this amount of time and now it's just it's go time. So
yeah.
it, there's something that happens. I think it's happening way less now than back in the days, but
From what I've
mostly
heard,
because
yeah,
of like mostly because I think it's the industry is a little more conscious about how much goes into things like this. But
right, yeah.
it's something that people just need to get ready, understand it's part of it, but not that it's everywhere. And I think if you go through something like this in school, you probably have a good idea of the amount of work that goes into a major production.
Yeah, I think so, and it's helpful too doing it like on my own. Like I was able to, even though it was really brutal, and it's like I don't know like when in the future like it'll ever be that crazy again. Because the weird thing too is like the last 2 months of the film, we had to move out of school because of everything that happened. So like we were like not done rendering, and then they're like, you got to go home. And so everyone, it was like really a scary process. And so like I was finishing the film at home remotely, like working and stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
those last few weeks were like they were pretty rough, especially working from home because it's like now my family's around me, and like not that they're a distraction, but it's just different. Like when you're at school, you can kind of like isolate yourself. So it was tough, but again, even during that time, I found a few hours to like do something, get my mind off of it. And even though like I'm thinking the whole time like I need to be at work, I come back and I come with a better mind. So it's like even in the insane like student film, like getting it done, I still found little opportunities to like take those breaks because it's like you can't go like 4 days no sleep and like actually make good work. It's like you got to look at what you made and then be like, well, that's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a balance, but also at the end, it's just a push to get it done. So
Yeah,
I get it, but yeah, like you can still find that balance, and I think it's helpful. Again, I don't have a lot of professional experience, but I imagine that'll be helpful going into studios and stuff.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah,
So we kind of touched a little bit on that before, but if you were to recommend people who wants to make a short movie and they're kind of they know the basics of 3D, but which it's another kind of discussion as well because usually
right.
when you learn just the tool itself, right, and then you're like, oh man, now I'm gonna make something cool.
Right.
What kind of tips or if you were to set up like a kind of a path to someone like that, like what kind of things you think people should study to like get to a point where they feel confident that they're just not going to burn years into something. And because I've know people that have done that, where they
Right.
kind of work on something and then they just don't have this either the skill set to finish to take it to the final line, or if the story is not good enough. Like, what kind of advices you give to someone who wants to make a short movie or a
Yeah.
short film?
I think what you touched on there is like probably the biggest thing as far as making sure before you start making it that you like making it, and that it's that's what was playing in my mind the whole pre-production semester is like I'm going to work on this for a year. I was like I'm going to spend nights awake, tired, staring at this. I was like I gotta like it. I gotta like it enough to do that. So I think that was like the number one most important thing. I was like I think if I would have went with those other two ideas, I would have lost it. I would have lost like what excited me about everything. So I think that's first and foremost, like most important. Um, and then also I think, I mean, as far as like making a film goes, I think yeah, it's studying like movies and like what movies you like, and then like filmmakers and all that stuff, like all those principles and techniques and like cinematography, all that's like there too. Um, but as far as what I forgot what I was gonna say. Shoot. um,
What kind of things you recommend people to
right.
go into, I guess, and study?
Yeah, I think. Oh, the other thing, yeah, I was gonna say is like getting feedback. It's because, like, I don't know, I go back to that a lot, but that's the thing is like, how do I work on something for a while, and then yeah, not get to the point where I look back at it, and I'm like, oh, that's not so good. And I'm like the way for me to avoid that is just getting people to look at it. And again, it's people you have to trust will be honest with you, and you trust their feedback and kind of their eye for stuff. But if you show it, even showing it to like your family, like if you have a story and you're like, I want to know if this makes sense, like show it to someone who has no art experience and be like, hey, do you guys understand what's going on? And they're like, oh yeah, or maybe they laugh at it. You know, it's a genuine laugh, and like you kind of gets a reaction from that. I think that's helpful. So like I would just advise people to get feedback as much as possible when you're working on stuff, especially and you can get in the echo chamber and not be aware of what's wrong, you know, what's not working.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the great thing about school was that it made you get feedback. Like tomorrow you're getting feedback, whether you like it or not. And it's like, oh man. But I think that's really important, especially for filmmaking, because you're going to show it to an audience. Like that's kind of the goal is to you know, entertain people, to make people feel something. So it's kind of like you're testing it the whole time. You're testing how is it working? How are things feeling? And you get really numb to it. Like I can quote the whole film, tell you everything about it. And it's really tough because it doesn't even feel like a film. It feels like, you know, all these things that I worked on, you know, because I've just seen it so much. So it's important, I think, to get that perspective of other people, just fresh eyes. I think that's one of the biggest things.
And understand like what they're actually trying to say, right? 'Cause you did bring
Right.
that up, and even on I have a lot of friends that would ask feedback to their family, and they'll say like, what do they know about this thing, right? And most
Right.
of the
Right.
time,
Right.
even if they don't understand the technical aspects of what goes behind it, if they just kind of reacting to something, is because there's something that you just have to try to understand it yourself, right? And a lot of
Right.
it, for everything that we work on, like playtesting is a huge part of it when you're making a
Right.
game, right? And a lot of people don't know exactly why certain things don't feel the way they're supposed to.
Mhm.
But breaking that down, you should try to understand why they're reacting a certain way and why this is not working. And
Yeah.
maybe sometimes it relates to the art itself, and you just have to address it, even though they don't know how to express it. But if there's something there.
No, I think you're right. And that's part of the skill I think you learn too, as far as getting more feedback. You start to learn and see what those things are. You see past, like, when you show it to a general audience and they're like, um, something isn't understanding, or maybe just like you feel like when you're watching it, you feel like it drags. And you're like, I could speed that part up some. Like, because I've been in that spot, even with some other films. Like, there's nothing wrong with it, but I watch it in like a setting. I'm like, oh man, like that's really slow. You just kind of feel it drag. And so, yeah, I think you just learn those things.
Mhm.
And I'm still learning them a bunch. So I think, yeah, it's just like to learn that from showing it to people is big, but it just takes time too. Like you're not going to learn it overnight. So just keep showing it to people, keep getting those
Yeah.
notes, and you'll kind of get the hang of it eventually, I think.
Awesome. That was a really good question on the chat, and Johnny was asking if, given the film popularity online, what
All
was your
right.
approach to promoting the film?
That's a good question. And it kind of goes back to like what I did in high school. I emailed a bunch of people, like for like originally promoting the film. I researched like news sources. I was like, who might be interested in promoting the film? And I already know of some because I've been doing animation and stuff for a little bit now, so I'm aware of kind of things. And I even drew from my experience on YouTube, like people that I look up to. Like I've consumed a lot of online content, so I just drew from all that knowledge. And I was like, hey, I'll reach out to this person, or maybe I met this person over the years. So I think that a lot of people underestimate how much just sending an email to someone can do as far as making something happen. Yeah, like a lot of the stuff online that's happened, I've just emailed people. I've just been like, here's my film. Here's what I'm working on. I would love for you to check it out. No pressure. Just let me know if you're interested. And they would get back to me. Sometimes I'd send them 2 emails and then they would get back to me. But that was like generally my approach, is just push it out there, email it out there. I just spend an evening and just have kind of a message typed, and then I would adjust it based on the person that I'm sending it to. But really just trying to be personable, trying to be genuine, but trying to get the film out there to as many people as possible. So yeah, it's no really special way, or like I didn't pay money to promote it. I didn't do that at all. I've just really tried to reach out and build relationships with people. Because that's another thing, is that I've been kind of in the like art, film, animation space for since like the beginning of high school. So it's been like 8 years, and so I've been following people and like I know their work, and so I just try to build relationships because also I like their work. Like I knew about your work because I follow your work. I like your work, and so it's not just like, oh, I want you to promote the film. It's like, I really like what you do, and it'd be cool to talk with you and get to know you. And so I think that's part of it too, is just start building relationships with people, just getting to know them, following their work, or reaching out to them. I think that's huge. So yeah,
Completely agree.
yeah.
Um, what was the Alvino was asking? Well, what do you think was the most challenging part to making the movie?
That's tough. That's a tough question.
Everything. There's no.
I think the story, to be honest. I think that was the part where I was the most terrified and the most scared. Because again, that's where like I told you earlier, I felt the least confident, as far as like, I kind of knew I like actiony stuff. I kind of knew I liked like moody lighting. I know that I like, like really cinematic stuff. But for the story, it felt really difficult to really find where, the story that I wanted to tell. And so I think that was the most difficult part. Like all the technical stuff was tough and challenging, but again, I feel like a lot of that comes with iteration and just getting the feedback. So yeah, I think honestly that was the toughest part. Just getting the story working to where I was excited about it. I was ready to go spend 10 hours modeling a character and animating a shot because I'm happy with the story, because it all stemmed from that. So I think that was the most difficult part. For sure.
Yeah. How did you do the audio? I forgot to ask that. Like, was it?
So that's part I didn't do. I have nothing to do. For the audio, it was kind of I hired a sound designer and composer. And the way I did that is I looked online for short films that I liked and that I felt like had a really cool sound. And one is called Agent 327. Like, it's a Blender short film. Yeah. It's super cool. And I went to the credits. I found those two guys' name. I was like, I want to talk to them. So I found them online and I emailed them, and they both joined. And so they like knocked it out of the park. But something else I think helped with that is that I gave them pretty clear direction as far as everything goes. And the same thing with the voiceovers. I did like the voiceover in the very beginning, and then everyone else is hired voice actors who, they brought it up to a totally another level too. But with that, in the very first pass of the film, I do voice every character because I'm just figuring out like the pacing of the film. And I did put in like temp sound effects and like temps like soundtrack to get everything to feel right. And then when I went into sound design with the sound designer, Sander, I sent him Quarter Digital's Tactical Reloads video, where like the whole video is like based about guns because they have like slow motion and like all these sweet sounds. And I was like, if you could just like amplify the sounds to be like that cool, that would be great. And so I gave him kind of a reference point. He kind of knew the general direction with the film, and it was amazing because like the first pass, I was just like, oh my gosh, I was like that. So he nailed it, but it helped because I gave him kind of a reference point. I wasn't just like, hey, can you add sound? So adding that helped a lot. But all those guys, I have nothing to really do with that. They all knocked it out of the park. So
Yeah, they did a great job. It
they did.
definitely. I mean, audio is something that just brings everything
It
to
does.
it changes completely changes everything. It was awesome.
Definitely. Yeah. So huge thank you to them. Yeah, they did great.
Awesome. Techies was asking, what makes your animation look interesting to you? Like, what kind of makes you proud of? What's the one thing?
Hmm. That's a really good question. That's cool. I think is that I feel like it's fun to watch, and again, that's a subjective thing, I guess. But for me, like, I had a lot of fun making it, but like again, um, especially with shorter form content, like I knew going into this because it's a short film, and like some of my previous projects, I'm like, it's so short that I want to make sure that you just have like 2 minutes of fun because I don't have you for long. It's a short thing. So I'm like, I just want you to have just like go through the night and be like, that was cool. And maybe you want to go back and like experience again just because it was fun, just because there was a cool moment in there. And, the story is important. It's crazy, but it kind of connects and makes sense. But also you have a fun time. So I think that's really something for me. Like sometimes especially with a short film that's 2 minutes long, it's not, I don't go back to it because I cried or because I really felt something. That definitely exists, and that's, I think, valid and important. But a lot of times, like so much stuff I've seen online, like I'll just watch it because it's cool. Like it's fun. I'm entertained by it. It kind of draws me out of the world. So I think that's kind of my goal and like what I try to make, especially with something short like this, is just 2 minutes of like, you just had like a solid, like you're 2 minutes on my phone. That was great. So I don't know. Hopefully that's kind of answers the question.
Yeah, I know for sure, for sure. And I think this also touches on this other question that Jose asked. He said it's a very inspiring project. What do you think can make a project really pop and shine among a lot of other short films?
Mm.
I don't know if that's part of your answer to like just making sure people have fun, or if you have a different answer for this one.
No, that is a good question too. I mean, I think that's a part of it, but I don't think that's the requirement because there's short films that are like really slow and subtle, and they just like, wow, that was amazing. So I don't think that's the answer, but I think, I mean, I think one thing is like doing what you like will show through. It's like if I tried to make something that was like very different in tone, like I wouldn't put it as much work into it, and so it probably wouldn't have been as good as a result. So I think that's a part of it. But like, I mean, I can talk for like specific things for my film. And so like specific things for this film is like going into it, I was like, I know I want to make it feel bigger than it is, which is a tough thing to do with, a shorter film. But I was like, I want to make it feel like there's a bigger world. So like, I knew I was like, I have all these characters and stuff, but I was like, I'll limit how many shots I have with more than two characters down to like three. So like, again, you only see those henchmen and the boss in like two shots. But again, it makes it feel bigger. It makes you feel like you're watching something bigger. There's the establishing shot in the dockyard. That's a shot too that it took a long time. It took forever to open. I hated that shot so much, but it was super important because you cut from black with the montage, and then boom, you feel like you're in a giant space. And like if I would have had a closer thing, like it wouldn't have felt as big. So I think that's something that and it wasn't insanely complicated. It was mostly just patience because it took forever to like work on because it was so big, but it wasn't the most complicated shot by any stretch. So I think just finding ways to, again, push like the scale and how big things feel can be really effective as far as making it feel not just like it's two characters in a room talking or a small project. So just finding ways like that, if that's what you're going for, something to consider.
That's awesome. That was a great answer. Like now watching it again, I definitely get the
you see
feeling.
it.
Yeah, I see it.
So
Yeah.
it's planned, and also like another thing is the characters. Like a lot of the shots or like right here, like waist up. Like I'm not doing a lot of full body stuff because that requires more to animate, more to worry about lighting. It's like I'm just trying to be smart with my shots and
Mhm.
to make it feel as effective as possible. So
Very
it's just
cool.
something to think about. Yeah.
In terms of the art style, Sebastian is asking, like, did you base it with something that a specific studio that you like working? Are you aiming to a specific studio, or is it just the look that you wanted to have?
Yeah, that's a cool question. I think I like lots of different things, like we talked about earlier, as far as like story goes. Like I like a lot of different things, so it's tough for me to be like, oh, Disney, or like, oh, Pixar, or whatever. I didn't have one specifically. I did have more so artist that I referenced a lot. One huge artist that I love is Pedro Conti. I think he has like a fun take on characters that's often different, and I didn't. I don't think I like copied his style or like I specifically looked at his work, but like again, I'm always inspired by it, and so I just kind of have lots of different things I pulled from. So I don't think there was any one thing, but there's just pulling from multiple different artists. One that I think I did reference more is I probably don't know his name. I know him on Instagram. It's like Julian something, but he did a model of The Witcher,
Yep.
and a model of Spider-Man, and those are like I think that's some of the coolest like CG characters I've seen in a while. As
Hmm.
far as like more cartoony and animated, but they still have very sharp features. So that was something that I did. Like with the villain character, that was something I referenced a lot. Is like the more sharp edges and stuff. He inspired me a lot to do that. So
That's
yeah, I
awesome.
think it's just multiple different people that I like.
Both of those guys are really good friends, and I hope I can
Really?
get them here because
Yeah.
they work are awesome, and I can
Yeah.
definitely tell. Like Pedro, he does like the crazy, realistic renders with like the cartoony, or I'm gonna say cartoony, but stylized models.
Right.
He's
Exactly.
awesome. Like he's great, and Julian
Yeah.
too. Like he knocks out of the park with kind of his designs with like even reimagining existing characters with his style is awesome.
Yeah. 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 It's super cool. Super
Very cool,
inspiring.
man. Another question here from Panini: do you fear the replay button? Do you feel like you spend all this time and people would watch it one time and that's it?
Hmm. That's a
You
good.
shouldn't fear that.
That's a deep question. Yeah, I don't think so. I'm so glad people just watch it once. People tell me that maybe they watched it twice, but yeah, no, not at all. It's like a lot of times I watch movies just once. I'm not the type of person that watches like a movie, especially like a bigger movie, multiple times. I don't know. Like one is no, not at all. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
happy if you watch it once. So it's all good.
for sure. So
Yeah.
man, like what's next for you? Like when you started this, like what kind of do you want to work as an animator, or like going more in the kind of the directing movies? Are you working on another short movie? Like
Yeah.
what's
Yeah.
are you just taking some break? Let's play some games. Huh?
I do want to play some games. I'm going to play God of War soon,
Let's do it.
but yeah, like I think it'd be exciting because again, I like films, I like filmmaking, and like lately, especially in school, I started pursuing animation more, and that's kind of been my goal, and still is. I want to pursue that more and learn more about that. I feel like I have so much room to learn about that, so I'm excited going into that, and I think that's what I'm kind of going to pursue. But at the end of the day, I love filmmaking. I love all parts of it. I love making a whole project. So in the long term, I hope to, maybe have the opportunity to do more of that. But we'll see what presents itself. So I'm not sure. But
For
yeah,
sure, man. I think you'll be fine, and I can't really wait to see
thank you.
where you go and the stuff you're going to be working on. I think any studio, will be very happy to have you on their team because
I appreciate that.
I've said it before, and I think what you pull off is not easy. And
Thank you.
even when I first saw it, I was like, "What? What? I need to start making some stuff myself." Really inspiring stuff. So
Thank you. Thank you.
I
I appreciate
appreciate you taking the time also to come here so we can chat. Like I've enjoyed it.
it. Of course,
A
yeah,
lot
me
of
too.
questions. Thank you so much for sharing. And we'll keep in touch. I gotta ask you more questions about all this stuff.
I, no, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for checking it out in the first place. Like again, I don't know if you just watched it one time, but thanks for checking it out.
I've watched the replay button was definitely on my. My
Okay.
I watched at
I
least four
appreciate it.
times, like breaking it down.
I appreciate it.
Awesome,
But yeah,
man. Thank you guys. Thank you
yeah.
for the questions. You guys are awesome. Jeremy, you want to plug anything? I'll have your
Um,
links down on the
yeah,
description.
just like Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, go watch the film again or share it with someone. That'd be great. So
For
yeah,
sure.
that's all.
Sure, you guys. Man, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.